It's tweeted.
You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to an emergency podcast as Indiana has named Darien DeVries as next basketball coach, official as of 6 o'clock when the Indiana basketball released a statement. We're all just going to talk about what we know about Coach DeVries from his time at Drake, his time at West Virginia, and what it means for Indiana basketball. Joining me today, Ryan Phillips, Josh Pose. Let's just get right into it. Ryan, your thoughts. Indiana has its next basketball coach. How are you feeling? Is it a rant or is it a celebration or what is it, my friend?
I think that with any hire, you're kind of, especially when it's Indiana, you're a little having a little bit of a pause when you decide what you feel about it. But I mean, this is a guy who's a really good head coach. Now, will it work at Indiana? We'll see. But it's a guy who really turned around West Virginia this year after they were just awful last year and then got snubbed from the NCAA tournament, should have made it. And year one, that's impressive. He turned Drake into a power in the Missouri Valley Conference. He, those last 2 years, I think they were like 55 and 15 or something his last 2 years there. Really turned that into a good program that Ben McCollum benefited from. I'm not saying that McCollum didn't do his own work this year, but he really, when he inherited that program, he really benefited from what had already been built. As a guy who knows how to build a program, knows how to do it the right way. He definitely wants to, in this era, have NIL investment. That is what I've been told. And that's part of the reason that what he saw in Indiana being such a opportunity was the NIL investment, was the resources available to this program that wouldn't be available at West Virginia and certainly weren't available at Iowa, where a lot of people had drawn a direct straight line from West Virginia to Iowa for him. That was not the case, and he pretty quickly pulled himself out of the running for that position, pivoted to Indiana, was told about 1 o'clock, maybe noon today, that West Virginia basically conceded that if Indiana wanted DeVries, they were going to get him. And then it was just about Indiana, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and getting this done. So certainly I think of the candidates we had heard IU connected to, he's the one I was most excited about, with Brad Brownell, McCollum, some other guys. This is the one that I thought, of that level of guy, if you're not going to get Brad Stevens and you're not going to get somebody who's won a national championship or whatever, this is a guy who I think is on that next line and could be really good. And I think there's a lot of upside here.
You bring up a lot of good things. I know a lot of people will say the home run hire and may wonder why Indiana went this direction. But sometimes the guys that every one of us want, the dream guys, the guys that have been to Final Fours and all that, aren't necessarily available, whether it's the fit for Indiana or more likely they're okay where they're at. But DeVries has coached 7 years in college basketball as a head coach, over 20 other years as an assistant under Dana Altman and Greg McDermott at Creighton. That's a lot of college experience, which I think I will come back to here as long as we're on the show. But took Drake, who hadn't had a winning season, to 6 20-win seasons, including 2 championships and trips to the NCAA, and then should have had West Virginia in the tournament. 1913 faced a plethora of injuries on his squad, still had some real big wins on the resume. So he has some experience in college, 7 years as a head coach. He has been praised for his NIL work at West Virginia in some of the players that he was able to get to West Virginia in his first year, and we'll have to see how that plays out at Indiana. Josh, you've been on this quite a while. You've had some information leading up to this. You were looking into Coach DeVries for articles. Share with our viewers what you know about Indiana's new basketball coach.
Well, I know that Indiana fans might not. We talked about winning the press conference on Saturday. They might not think he won win tomorrow's press conference, which I'm being told is in the morning tomorrow. I don't know if that's been posted out there, but I've been told it is in the morning, late morning. But he's going to win a lot of people over with the team that he's going to build. There will be shooters at Indiana again, and I do believe that Tucker DeVries will come with him. I believe there's going to be more people to come with him, maybe not from West Virginia, but from other places that will shoot the ball. Obviously, you don't know what the Mullins family thinks right now, but that would be another key. I believe that DeVries would get Luke Goody. But look, Drake basketball was terrible before 2014, I believe, or 2018. That's 6 straight winning seasons. He built a program from the ground up, and people are talking Ben McCollum this, Ben McCollum that. Well, Darien DeVries really built the foundation there. So I think this is not a home run hire for Indiana, but sometimes you swing for a home run, hit a double or a triple.
Yeah, I think it takes some time. I see some people in the chat are watching games already, and that's what you have to do, go and watch. As far as understanding what he's going to do offensively and defensively at Indiana, we really got to wait till we see an exhibition game or see some of the things. But a lot of college basketball does the middle ball screen and some of that action. But what you really are, I think, is we're concerned with as fans is that roster construction. Does he bring in the players that can hit shots? Does he bring in players, keep players from Indiana's roster that'll fit together and compete? I think, his 7 years of basketball, winning basketball, demonstrates to me his ability to put together a roster, and now having NIL resources to go out and get guys that he can get. He demonstrated he did that at West Virginia. And I think they won 7 games last year. I know they've been in disarray the last couple years with coaches changes, but to go 19-13, it really would have been better if his son would have been able to play a full year and so forth. I think that's what I urge all of our fans to do is go watch some games, go understand. But until we start seeing roster construction, we're not going to really be able to understand where this team will be headed as far as wins and losses next year. And we probably won't know until November when the games start. But you do have a coach. I want to ask you guys, how important was it this time to get someone who's demonstrated winning at the collegiate level? And I know people are going to want to see Final Fours and all that, but we had an Elite 8 coach in Archie, and it didn't work out. I think that's where some people might be skeptical. But this guy seems to really have a handle on it. Maybe that's just hopeful thinking for me. Ryan, your thoughts on the college experience, not only the 7 years of record, but the 20 years under Dana Altman, who's an outstanding coach, and Greg McDermott, who was thought to be for the Indiana coach too. There's 27 years of basketball experience at the college level at putting a roster together and running a game on game night. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that they learned their lesson after the last one where they tried to take a coach who didn't have that much experience and teach him, with the people around him, whereas bringing a guy in who has that much experience is another level. And DeVries is, he's 49. He's been around the game a long time. And Creighton has been a very well-run program. Then he went to Drake and did it himself. And then the turnaround this year, West Virginia, is one of the best jobs in the country. I mean, turning West Virginia around from what it was, the last place team in the Big 12, to being a team that should have gotten into the NCAA tournament, won 19 games, had some close ones, could have won more than that, had a decent, showing against Quad 1. I think that you're looking at a guy who not only can build a program, but also turn a program around pretty quickly, and has shown that he can do that. And so I think that what Indiana's doing here is, you look at the top guys in the sport. A lot of them are going to be very comfortable because there's a lot of money everywhere and moving is hard. And then you go to the next level, which is guys who are in a spot, who are really good coaches, who are looking to move up and prove themselves that they are one of those guys. This is one of those guys who was the next in line. And if he didn't go to West Virginia last year, he'd still be at Drake doing what Ben McCollum did this year and then ready to move up again. So I've seen some people compare this to sort of like Archie Miller and whatever smaller school guy came up, but he coached in the Big 12 for a year and did really well. And in his first year with a brand new group of players, and he didn't have his son playing, who missed most of the season, who was one of their best players, if not their best player, and who will probably be coming to Indiana, I would assume. So I think that there's there's that factor too. He shot 47% from three, and he only played 8 games. I mean, so your record this year winning, he only won 19 games. Well, he didn't have a guy he was relying on to be the cornerstone of his team. So I think this is a very good hire. I think style of play will be interesting to see if this is a guy who plays more like Creighton did, plays more like he did at Drake, plays more like West Virginia. He's shown multiple things throughout his time as a head coach as well. And so I have a feeling it's going to be that's adaptable. And I'll say this on top of that. he has never had the kind of talent he's going to be able to get in Indiana. Who he puts on his staff as far as recruiting goes will be key. And I think that he's a guy who has a lot of energy and will be willing to go into those living rooms and willing to keep contact up and willing to go nuts on that side of things in a way that we haven't seen at Indiana since Tom Crean. And that's a long time to go without really enthusiastic recruiting. And I think he'll do that.
Yeah, I was watching film this afternoon. Didn't get a lot of stuff done from when it started to break, and we started to hear about it. And I had to try to teach a little bit as well. But, watching one of the games in the Bahamas, the team came from behind down late. And, how much of that is coaching, how much of that is players. But I'm excited because I think it's the guy has an idea how to run a program. We cannot guarantee any of the fans that it'll be successful or not. I'm not going to sit here and say it's the best hire and we're destined for Final Fours. Only time will tell. But Darien DeVries is going to come in here with a plan. He's going to execute that plan, and he's going to work hard. Those are things that this program needed a huge injection of. Regardless of how you felt about the past regime, we needed a guy that was program centered as far as every aspect of Indiana basketball, and I believe DeVries will do his very best to fill all of that. And I think it is a good hire. Josh, your thoughts on some of the experience that DeVries brings to this Indiana job?
I think he brings great experience. When looking back at everything he's done, it just jumps off the page that he was an assistant under Dana Altman and Greg McDermott. Dana Altman, still one of the best coaches in college basketball right now. Greg McDermott was obviously a name that was floating around a little bit. I don't think there was any leverage to it at any point during this coaching.
That dude's close to retiring. He's done with the whole thing. I think
so. But I think that this is the hire that Indiana will look back and believe that they made the right decision. I don't know what Ben McCollum will do in the future or any other of the names that were thrown around. But in terms of excitement on the floor, I think Indiana made the correct decision, and they made it quick. There's not much time with the portal opening soon, and with NIL deals and stuff coming to an end. I think it's April 7th, if I'm correct. You got to get to work now. And actually, Scott Dolson lucked out. If Darien DeVries was his guy the entire time, then gosh, 6:30 on Sunday had to have been the happiest time of his life that he got Indiana and West Virginia not in the tournament, and he could make his move right away. So I think that going in the future, there'll be a good basketball team, and I know Ryan's going to look to the air and pray to the sky again when I say they're going to be able to shoot. There's a recruiting class that's also coming in from DeVries at West Virginia that if he brings over, could be a really good 2025 class at Indiana.
Let's address this. I see some of that. Go ahead, Ryan. Finish up, and then I'll ask the next question. You're beautifully muted.
Sorry, is this better? My back.
Yeah, there we. No, it's not better, but we can hear you.
Even my microphone gets tired of me sometimes. It just automatically mutes. It's crazy.
The voice of reason.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. So one thing I think that's worth noting is legitimate. I made this point a minute ago, but in the last 8 years, Indiana has not had a normal recruiting setup and has not had a normal recruiting effort from the head coach. And it's not to knock Mike Woodson or Archie Miller. It's just the way they did things was different. Darien DeVries is not going to be that. And the thing is, Indiana has missed out on so much talent from in-state specifically over the past decade and that bleeds into the Crean era because Crean did not have a great relationship with Indiana head coaches or with Indiana high school coaches. So I think that this is going to be a great reset for the program with the kind of recruiting effort that is necessary to win championships. Maybe not national, but certainly Big Ten championships. And then once you're doing that, that's when you build to that next level. But I really do think that Indiana, with the NIL might it has, with the recruiting grounds it has, with all of these things, is going to see something very different. Indiana fans are going to see something very different beginning immediately on that front. And in, over the next year, certainly you'll hear a lot more about that. Recruiting was not a strong suit of this program for a long time. And I think DeVries, while I think he's a great coach on the court, he also balances the program building aspects of it, which is recruiting, development. All of those things are a key, as big a key as your on-court coaching ability to winning championships. And so I think that Indiana fans have maybe sort of downplayed the importance of that over time just because they haven't seen it. And now it's going to be back, and we'll see how important it is.
I'm not sure if this has already been. Oh,
go ahead, Josh.
Okay, I'm not sure if this has already been in chat, but and I think we've all been seeing it. The last two top Indiana recruits to commit to Indiana were the product of Tom Ostrom. And no matter what you thought of him on Archie's staff, he's on DeVries' staff as the second assistant. And I thought, personally, he did a good job in the state of Indiana. I didn't think he was great on the bench, and I'll go on record saying that. But as a recruiter, Tom Ostrom is a very good recruiter to be with DeVries. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was back in Bloomington with DeVries and staff.
Ryan, I want to ask you, because it's popping up, and it'll pop up all over social media, and everyone's entitled to their opinion, but would you answer why Indiana didn't get the top 5 coaches in college basketball to come, or top 10 college coaches to come to Indiana, and how that's not as easy as we all would want? We all would love that if we got one of the top 10. I don't even know how you define the top 10 other than, maybe historically, but could you explain? There's a lot of people who are wondering, did we settle? How difficult it is to get people with buyouts and all of that stuff. At least your opinion on like, you didn't get the brand name guy to come to Indiana, and DeVries is somewhat unknown.
More than ever, it's difficult to pry coaches away. Buyouts are huge. Salaries are huge. And here's the thing, and I said this the last time when Mike Woodson wound up being the hire. It's hard to get people to leave. Leaving is not fun. Think about how awful it is for you when, if you're you own a house or you rent an apartment, how awful moving is. Like, just think about that. Now imagine moving not only your family, but an entire program to another place. You'd rather stay and just get paid. And unless you're in an awful situation, and most of these coaches who are good would not sign up for an awful situation. And so expecting Indiana to go out and get, Danny Hurley or someone, obviously not that high, but going and getting something like that, it's difficult. It's not that they don't try. It's a two-way street, and leaving a place you're comfortable in is very difficult. Nate Oates came out immediately and said, like, I'm not interested in any jobs. I'm staying in Alabama. He plays second fiddle to football there, but you know what? He gets paid a lot of money. There's very little pressure, and he just gets to do what he wants to do. Maybe eventually he'll leave, but right now that's a great spot for Nate Oates to be in. And so just using him as an example, it's difficult to do, guys. And so what you have to do is field your list of realistic candidates. And then among that, you vet all of these people as hard as you can. There have been names, and I'm not going to talk about those guys because they're not the head coach, and we're here to talk about Indiana's head coach. But there have been guys associated with this job opening who probably would have taken the job, who wanted the job, who Indiana dug into and said, absolutely not. Because just because stories aren't public doesn't mean they don't exist, and doesn't mean they don't come out. And universities do not want this kind of PR disaster on their hands. So there are a number of people who they looked into over the last couple coaching searches. Actually, it's not even just this one, but who probably would win on the court at Indiana. But there's all these other things. And when you're the head coach at Indiana, you are a representative of the university, and you're essentially a politician in the state, and you can't have the kind of baggage that some of these guys had.
Josh, your thoughts on the general process of how difficult it is to get some of those names. And there were some very good coaches, as Ryan said, that had a lot of issues that weren't basketball. And I understand the argument. We just want to win and look past some of that stuff. But there were a couple candidates. I think Ryan's right. Let's not talk about them by name, but just how difficult you thought it was. And I don't think this is a settle. I think this is going out and finding someone that fits Indiana basketball. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think within some conversations, that Indiana could have ill afforded to hire, I'm going to say, those guys, because optics. Indiana basketball has always been about being better than the rest. We all know this, and look where it's gotten them. We all know what the last 25 years have been. But you cannot go and hire someone who has that baggage. You want to go out and get someone that can fire up the fan base and not split. This fan base has been split for about a decade now, and I think DeVries checks all the boxes. I think he's less than 50, so you can have him for a long time, and you can succeed with him. Sure, you say Archie Miller, it's kind of the same as Archie. Not really. Archie Miller didn't have any Power 5 experience, and if he didn't have a skeleton of a roster, DeVries would be in the tournament right now probably as a 6 seed if he had Tucker on the team. So I kind of agree with you by saying they went out and got someone. They didn't settle. This isn't a settling for Indiana. And leaving those guys in the past, you want someone that wants to coach Indiana basketball. People are going to say no. If they say no, you're not going to beg them, because you want someone that wants to be in Bloomington and wants the program to succeed. And I think that's what Darien DeVries will do in Bloomington.
So we have a new coach. It's going to be officially announced at a press conference, I believe, at some point tomorrow. Is kind of what the word that we're getting. And Ryan, as we go forward, what kind of time frame are we looking at? We have the portal opening up next Monday. How does Coach DeVries go about getting a staff? He doesn't necessarily bring everyone, but he might bring a lot of people. What's the timetable for us to start even getting more news about what this Darien DeVries-led basketball team is going to look like?
Well, I think he's going to hit the ground running tomorrow contacting recruits. I think that's probably as soon as that press conference is over, probably before it, he's going to talk to his current team, may see, who wants to, come with him, what the portal situation looks like for the current roster. And then you start moving to bring recruits in. And, I don't know what his personality is about bringing the kids who are committed to West Virginia with him. Some coaches won't do that, out of respect to their past situation, but it could be that some of those guys are coming, some aren't. We don't know. I mean, we're very open. It's going to be a very open thing, but I would imagine by the end of next weekend, we're going to have an idea of who he's targeting and who he wants to go after and what kind of roster he wants to build. And I saw somebody DM me said like, hey, his team's 3-point percentages have always been low, but they shoot a lot of them. And I think that, a lot of that is on individual shooters and development and all of those things. But his offense is a modern basketball offense that will try and have that kind of balance. And so it'll be interesting to see the first moves he makes to build a roster, especially given that, Umar Ballo's gone. You're going to be losing probably a chunk of guys. I'll be honest. You're probably going to lose a chunk of guys who are going to go play elsewhere, with a new coach coming in. So I think by the end of next weekend, we'll start to have some kind of idea how he's going to formulate things. Is he bringing his whole staff? Is he going to shake things up? Because Indiana's on another level financially, can go out and get you some better assistants potentially. I agree that Tom Ostrom's probably coming. So it'll be interesting to see how that all unfolds over the next week. But I think by next weekend, we'll start understanding what he's going to do as a coach and how he wants to build this roster in year one. And remember, how he builds it in year one isn't how it's going to look in year 4. When you go into the portal, you don't have a perfect solution for everything you need. You're kind of sifting through guys who maybe fit 3 of the 5 things you need from that position, and you're going to go get them and hope they can, you can find other guys to patchwork fill those roles. But once this recruiting machine starts going, I think we'll also see 6 months, 7 months from now, we'll see how he wants to target things long-term as opposed to just for next year.
Okay, Josh, help this old dog with some analytics, right? On Ken Palm, the point distribution is how many points come from 3-pointers, right? And then the 3-point attempts to field goal attempts is the percentage of 3-pointers that are taken in the offense. Is that correct?
You're the analytics guy. It's not me. I don't have the Ken.
I'm a basketball coach. But anyway, I think it's 3-point attempts per field goal attempts was 44th best in the country at 46.1% of their shots last year were 3-pointers. Modern basketball. Points from 3-pointers, 38% of their points came. That was 38th in the country last year. And even the stat that I liked the most, that he had a top 15 defense at West Virginia in his first year, a tough conference in his first year. And the 3-point defense was 29.7, which was 9th in the country last year at West Virginia, a Power 5 school in one of the top 4 conferences. And those numbers kind of correlate throughout. assist numbers are up. There were a couple years when the 3-point attempts were at 31% and in the 300s and 200s, but he's gotten more and more 3-point attempts as the year have gone on. So again, we don't know for sure, but to me that looks like a little bit more modern basketball than what we've had in the past. Josh, your thoughts on just those quick stats that we kind of looked at? We all haven't had a whole lot of time to dive in, watch film, or dig totally deep into this, but we want to give you a flavor of what might be coming to Indiana.
Yeah, we won't be seeing too big basketball anymore, and I think everybody can be thankful for that. And it doesn't have to be the prettiest basketball, but it's going to be a hell of a lot prettier than what we've had the last 3-4 years, and maybe even the last 8 years. We have to remember that it's going to be a process, and Ryan kind of alluded to it. The process hasn't started on recruiting yet. It doesn't start tomorrow. It started already. Don't mistake that. It has started. It might have started yesterday, from what I've heard. So there are guys that are going to fit the mold. They're going to play a modern style of basketball, and I haven't been able to dive into the film because I've been going crazy already, just trying to figure out things before it broke, and now here we are. So now I get the chance to. But I think a modern style of basketball is what we're going to see. It might not be as quick as a Tom Crean, but you'll see more shooting. Like you said, those 3-point numbers will go up with guys like, I've already said it, DeVries, Goody if he comes back, which I heard there's about an 80% chance of, and some other guys that come in. So modern basketball, we get rid of the booty ball, too big lineup, and it should be refreshing, to say the very least.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Let me say one thing about that, Coach, is that I think also,
yeah, sure,
coaches, and I think DeVries has run different stuff. I think that he has a grounding philosophy, but he's run different stuff over the years and been, an assistant who's run different stuff. I think unlike some guys in the past, I don't expect him to adhere to this hardcore, like, this is my system. This is what we're going to run. We're going to fit into this square box that I create. And if it doesn't work, well, I know better than you, which has kind of been a pattern for about the past decade at Indiana, not to name names. But I do think that this is a situation where he is going to tailor what he runs to his roster to a degree. And so also when you get better players, it opens up what you can run. And so I do think, again, I know we're saying, well, he's been in places that didn't have that, it's not like this guy won 5 Big Ten championships or SEC championships somewhere. I understand that, guys. But when you look at the next evolution of a coach, you have to look at what they have at their disposal and what they can do resources wise, especially considering, like I said, you can go out and get better assistants at Indiana than you could at Drake or West Virginia. So maybe you bring in somebody who specializes in this kind of development or, whatever. So I do think that, looking at his past, you get an idea or a feel for what he wants to do. Results don't necessarily tell you as far as 3-point percentage or whatever. It's the intent to do that. Then you go out and get the pieces who can do that is the next level for DeVries as a head coach, I think.
I think the way you
second. I've been saying Braylon Mullins. I mean Trent Sisley. It has been a long day.
Yeah.
That is my apology. And he just said, let's get to work on Twitter. So that just reminded me. So there's my correction.
You're all good.
So now you made me forget what I was going to say. Getting old here. But we do have a statistician on the run who is driving people around in Dallas, who's sending his contribution into this emergency podcast. Jared Morris, if you might know him, he said that Dayton
Who's
had
that
20. He's sending us texts about wins prior to coaches. So Archie Dayton had 20 win seasons since 2000, and the wins for Dayton prior to Archie, 22, 25, 27, 23. The wins prior to Drake only had 8 20-win seasons in the 2000s. 6 of them were by DeVries. The wins were 17, 7, 7, 9, 15, 15, and so on. And then with him, 2026. So, a quick look at those stats show that he quickly turned around Drake, which is Missouri Valley. And then he went to West Virginia, and I know it's only 1 year, but he quickly turned around there. Those stats courtesy of some guy named Jared Morris, who I think is really dying a slow death not being on the show, but glad that we did this. So, what else you guys want to talk about here? I know we don't have a whole lot of time and we don't have a lot of information. We'll get a little bit more as we get to know Coach DeVries. Josh, let's just say your overall thoughts about when you heard this. Not when you heard it, but as you started to get the information. Your final thoughts here on the hire and how we should go about looking at this.
I don't think it's a home run, but I think this is a perfect fit for Indiana and Darien DeVries. I heard it last night for the first time, and I was going back and forth about it, and I was a little bit just back and forth, and then this morning
I made Josh laugh. I'm sorry, guy.
You did make me laugh, and that was awesome. So I think this is all around will go down as a good hire. I'm not going to say great because people can record this and people will say, look what you said and look what you did to us. But I think cleaning house, bringing in his own group of coaches, all that kind of stuff will tabula rasa for Darien DeVries. I'm content. I think he's going to bring in some good players in year one this time. I'm actually not going to say it. I think we'll be talking about a game in March next year instead of talking about what the coach did.
I think Duncan has a really good question. I think, Ryan, I'd like for you to try to answer that. One of the things I'm proud of, Scott Dolson, is that this was pretty tight-lipped for the most part, and I encourage people to appreciate that. A lot of times when you hear the initial list, that's agents and other people floating names so that they can get a contract extension or some more money somewhere else. No one knows who was on the initial list. It could have been Darien DeVries at the top. It could have been some others that they were talking to in the search firm, and it wasn't several months. These things go down. It probably was several months, but they're doing their homework as the decision was made. And I really want to say thanks to Scott Dolson. I think he's done a good job with the Signetti hire. I think now that he had the handcuffs taken off of him by the board of trustees, he was able to go and do what he wanted to do, and he's going to have to own this one if it doesn't work out. It's one of the biggest hires of his tenure, and so I believe with that kind of pressure, he's going to try to make the best one, and we won't know for sure, but Duncan wants to know whether he was considered last year and all that. Why wasn't he mentioned before yesterday? Well, Indiana's not going to throw out a bunch of names for us to consider that they're really seriously considering. You want your institution to be tight-lipped. I think you would agree, Ryan, correct? You're muted.
Did it again.
I don't know why it's doing that. It's not a big fan of the hire. Apparently, it doesn't want to hear me extol it. No, I think we don't know what the list was. We don't know what it looked like, and it's rarely linear. I think people think that there's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 3, they usually have a group. And by the way, people are getting carried away with the idea of a search firm. So the search firm is brought in essentially to do very deep background checks on these guys. They don't make the decision. They could make a recommendation, but the athletic director isn't beholden to that. It just takes the background check out of the university's, it's not the university's job anymore. They can dig in deeper, find things, and then you tell them what you're looking for, and they narrow things down for you. I think that people get sort of carried away with that concept, like the search firm is doing the search. And I don't think that's ever really true. They help and assist and work with the athletic director and also do the background checks and do the digging. So, hiring a search firm, we hired a search firm and this is all we got. It's like everybody kind of has their version of a search firm. And honestly, you want your athletic director doing that. You don't want him to be handling all of the nitty gritty. What I'll say about this is you're right, Coach. We don't know what the list was. The list could have been, I would assume Brad Stevens was on it because Scott Dolson loves him some Brad Stevens. I would assume that there were some other guys on there as well who maybe are doing really well at their current place and had no, interest in leaving. And Indiana, I think, aims to swing big and back channels people, contacts them, finds out who's interested, and then narrows from there. but that doesn't mean that DeVries wasn't always involved in the mix. I think that the other thing you have to look at is his season is over. And that's probably why this moves so fast. Is, had he been in the NCAA tournament, this probably doesn't happen for another week or so. And we probably don't hear his name for another week or so because they don't have a chance to meet. And some coaches will not meet while their team is still playing. And so while there may have been some back channeling, there may have been some connecting. But what we do know is that DeVries turned down Iowa very quickly. So that tells me this connection has existed for a while and that he knew that Indiana would be interested because he didn't play them off against each other. We heard reports that he was going to talk to Iowa. Then we heard a report that he was out of consideration for Iowa. That tells me again that this didn't happen in 24 hours. There has been some initial contact, whether it was direct or back channeled or whatever. So again, the idea that this came out of nowhere, I would assume does not exist. I think that this is he's been on the list and he may be, it's a group of guys at this tier and who separates themselves, throughout the process. So, again, I think that nobody but Scott Dolson knows exactly what the process was, knows exactly who he talked to, knows exactly who representatives of the university he talked to. But I do think it's pretty insane to say that he wasn't on the list. I would assume that he's been there the whole time.
I talked to some Iowa people at the Big Ten tournament. They thought DeVries was the guy for them. And so you're right, when it came out that, he wasn't a candidate there, that, again, that speaks volumes that the guy wanted to be at Indiana. He was at Drake and Des Moines and all of that, but he believes he can come here and win. And that's important. I know Woodson thought that too, and Archie Miller. We can't guarantee anyone watching that this is going to be successful. But you do have a coach with some college experience. I think that was Woodson's ultimate downfall at some point, that he brought that pro mentality and really believed in it, and tried to make it a go, and it really didn't pan out and had to go separate ways. We have a college coach who is very well respected. My son was a manager at Indiana State, competed against his Indiana State Sycamores under Greg Lansing. I can't speak for Coach Lansing, but I know my son has been texting him and getting some good information about how they respected that program when they played Drake. And my son has a lot of he meets all the guys and runs all the stuff when they come in, so he gets to interact with all the coaches and has nothing but respect about Coach DeVries as a person as well. So as we wrap up, again, Darien DeVries has been announced through a statement to be Indiana's next coach. Was it the 31st? I don't have it called up. 31st head coach of your Indiana Hoosiers. He will be announced at some time tomorrow. We believe it to be in the morning. It is a new direction for Indiana basketball. We understand the excitement for those of you who are excited. We also understand those of you who wanted to go with a little bit bigger, higher. But I encourage everyone to just give it a little bit of time and see what happens. Ryan, your last call. Let's go to last call. We don't have a script for today on this emergency pod.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting there is a quote from Darien DeVries about why he took the job already, the prepared statement, I assume. But he says, "This is unquestionably one of the top jobs in America. As someone who grew up in the Midwest loving the game of basketball, I've always admired the IU basketball program for its championship-level success, tradition, and fan support. There's a passion to succeed at the highest levels, both within the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament, and that's a desire that as a coach I share. On top of that, the alignment is there on a department and university level to make it happen." I assume he's referring to NIL there. I'm excited for this opportunity, and I'm ready to work relentlessly to assemble a staff and roster that competes for championships. So that's a guy who's excited to be there. And I don't think he's just excited for the paycheck, because he probably could have gotten the same paycheck from West Virginia. He just wouldn't have been able to get the NIL resources on top of it. Look, I think that Indiana has been in a bad place for 8 years. There have been moments of brightness and moments of, the sun breaking through, but they've been quickly swamped. This is a guy, I think, who can get it done at Indiana. Is he a national championship coach? We will see. But when you take a guy who's a good on-court coach, who has the attitude and energy that DeVries has shown over the years, who has built programs before, basically from the ground up, who has authored a turnaround that was very impressive at West Virginia, and who plays a modern style of basketball, Those are the ingredients to get a program like Indiana back on track. Will he do it? We'll see, guys. I've been wrong before, but I do think. Look, once in a while, coach. It happens once in a while. You put too much pressure on me when you say never. But I do think that this is a guy who has all of the elements and brings those to the table to move Indiana forward and move Indiana to the next level. We've done the IU guy thing. We've done we've tried all these other things. Let's go with a guy who's built programs and has been successful and who clearly has the energy for this job and who clearly has a passion to take it. That's what we should be aiming for. If you don't get, the top coach in the country, get a guy who's going to outwork the top coaches in the country. And I think that's a guy Darien DeVries is. I think he has the right idea what to do on the court. I think he's shown it on both ends of the floor that his teams can be successful. And I think that this is the kind of guy that if he gets the right players in place and has the right support, he can win big at Indiana. We'll see. I think one thing that's happened over the past decade is Indiana has had head coaches that were on the bottom half of the Big Ten as far as like their ability. I don't think that's going to be the case with Darien DeVries.
And well said. And we're going to end it there. We need to say we're sponsored by Home Field Apparel. You've heard us talk about it. I hurry up and got my Indiana Hyper crew neck on for the show. Nice and warm down here in the cool basement. Go to homefieldapparel.com. They got all kinds of new things, some mystery boxes coming out. We thank them for support. We thank Ryan for joining quickly and Josh as well. But that's going to do it for the show today, as Indiana has its new head coach in Darien DeVries, and we'll learn more about it tomorrow and in the weeks to come as he assembles his coaching staff and his roster. So thanks for watching. We will be with you soon as we get more and more information. And until then,
take it from me, Christian Wofford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
all right, fellas, let me end the stream here. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Enjoy the NCAA tournament, and let's go Hoosiers. It's time to get excited again. I'm a very excited old man. I hope you find time to be excited, and if not, wait till we start winning, and then you can rejoin us. Take care.